Hey everyone, talking about the top 20 boozy fragrances. So these are going to lean mostly masculine just by the nature that boozy notes are typically used more often in masculine fragrances and more marketed to men, but there are definitely plenty on this list that are marketed unisex as well. So we're going to go in reverse order, starting at 20 and then getting all the way to 1. I tried to include a pretty diverse mix of different types of boozy scents on here so that there's kind of something for everyone if you're at all open to boozy scents. I'm not a big boozy scent fan, but I also think that's why this list could be helpful as well, because if you want something that everybody around you is going to be okay with as well, even if they're not big on boozy stuff, I think these would all work for that for the most part. First up, Guerlain Spiriteuse Double Vanille. This is smoky, woodsy vanilla with jasmine, ylang ylang, benzoin, cedar, rum, rose, and spice. So for those who have tried Mercedes-Benz Club Black, this reminds me a little bit of that with like a hint of Jazz Club, among other things. Really nicely done. High quality, but still very pleasant mass appealing. There's almost like a light cocoa powder accord on me as well. So I would recommend this for people who are interested in like a boozy vanilla type of scent, because this is just the quintessential one of that for me. And this could definitely be very, very unisex. It's not masculine leaning. That one goes for $360 for 100 mils, so very, very pricey, but you can get a decant for much cheaper and just wear it on special occasions. Next up, 19, Kilian Dark Lord. Bergamot, Sichuan pepper, bourbon pepper, Davana, rum, jasmine, vetiver, cypriol, cedar, and patchouli. This is spicy, rubbery, oily, smoky leather, burnt vetiver, and then some boozy and dark green aspects. And although, yeah, it's intense, it also has a slightly fresher side and a tiny peak of like a faint gourmand sweetness in between some of the more harsh notes, maybe from the bergamot and jasmine. Really tantalizing and intriguing, and the rum and patchouli kind of add this extra rough edge that makes it so this isn't something that I would necessarily wear, but it's definitely a must check out if you're into kind of something that's more intense and smoky and green boozy. Next up, more on the citrus and fresh boozy side, we've got Burlington 1819 by Roja. This has grapefruit, lime, mandarin, bitter orange, ginger, cinnamon, cumin, saffron, patchouli, oak moss, rum, tobacco, cedarwood, cashmere wood, benzoin, vanilla, labdamen, ambergris, and musk. Really nice, rich, fresh, spicy citrus. And I remember when I had first tried this, I was kind of comparing a sample of this and Oligarch, another one by Roja that's on the fresher side. And I asked my wife to smell both. She thought this one was so much better. So, and again, like I said, I'm not normally a big boozy fan, but this does it in such a good way where even though it has booze notes, even though it has cumin notes, tobacco, patchouli, all these things I'm not normally that into, this manages to just supersede any of the individual notes from being too kind of one-dimensional and just smells like a really well-blended original creation. So definitely, if you want something on the fresher side, but you still want to get your little boozy note fix in, that's a good one. Next up, we've got a designer that came out pretty recently. This is Gentleman Eau de Parfum Reserve Privee by Givenchy. This has bergamot, whiskey, chestnut, orris, iris, benzoin, cedarwood, vetiver, and patchouli. I was seeing non-stop hype about that, but between the booze and the iris heavy parts, I was like, I'm probably not going to like it. Wasn't expecting that much, but to my surprise, after smelling it, I definitely see the appeal. The chestnut gives it a really nice, like, smoky undertone, and the combination of the iris and the chestnut creates an accord that is actually more unique than I expected, especially for a designer. Masculine, but not in a try-hard way, and it has kind of this mysterious edge that draws you into it. So if you like iris and you want something that's boozy and iris, this is excellent. This goes for $111 for 100 ml, so especially if you once it hits discount sites and stuff like that, you could get this one for a lot more affordable than some of the other ones on this list. Very classy, yet super modern option for cold nights. Next up, another one that's more on the fresher side, and this leans into the more kind of vodka and gin martini side of boozy. Carolina Herrera 212 VIP Men. This has vodka, gin, caviar lime, frozen mint, black pepper, hot ginger, apple, kingwood, salty amber, leather, and tonka bean. And especially with the multiple boozy notes, and I was expecting something really kind of piercing with the vodka and gin vibe, but it's really, really wearable and smells surprisingly well blended and fresh to me. It's so bright, so fresh, but with like a twist to it from the spices, leather, pepper, and woodsy notes. And this one you can get for as low as $70 or less for 100 ml on discount sites like FragranceNet, even cheaper if you get a tester. So I highly recommend that one if you like something with like a more martini-ish boozy side, but again, it does not smell over the top boozy. It's not going to offend anyone around you, just very fresh and nice and appealing. And I think Carolina Herrera just does a great job of taking sometimes more challenging notes and turning them into just really, really wearable stuff, but that doesn't smell too samey, basic designer. Next up, this is probably one of the most challenging ones in the list, but I like it. Akro Malt. It has notes of whiskey, seaweed, rum, patchouli, and leather. So that sounds like a nightmare to me, and it does indeed smell like booze and seaweed, but in so much more of a wearable way than that sounds. Has a smoky, almost like cade oil type of core running through it, really refined leather, smooth boozy notes, and seaweed from a cool and breezy beach at night. So, as mentioned, I expected to hate this, and I definitely don't like the idea of someone smelling me and thinking, you smell like a combination of whiskey and seaweed. Yikes. But I actually really like this. It's just so well balanced between like smoky, salty, sweet, and refined. And the opening is a bit acrid, like it's definitely pretty sharp and intense in the opening, but it does settle down into a more cohesive scent pretty quickly. Unique, interesting, and intriguing. So if you're looking for something that's definitely not going to smell like anyone around you and is going to be pretty unique from a boozy vibe, that's going to be a good one. Next up, we've got one that's more kind of in the gin direction. I would call this like a gin and tonic type of scent. Bond number 9 Brooklyn. I'm picky about Bond number 9. Some of them just don't really do it for me, especially for the price, but this is probably one of my favorites by them. And it's described even from them as being like a martini. I really like it. On me, the notes almost combine into smelling like Hinoki would, just really fresh and green with a bright pop from the grapefruit early on. Has this really inviting fresh spiciness to it, but in a really modern way, not barbershop-esque at all. And then it dries down to a more calm woodsy scent. The leather doesn't go too strong. And I think this is more youthful than a lot of Bond number 9 stuff. Not that all of their stuff is super mature or anything, but this just feels like more energetic and vibrant, and just, yeah, I definitely recommend that one if you're looking for a gin and tonic type of scent. Up next, another intense one by BeauFort London called Iron Duke. This has leather, tobacco, gunpowder, and rum, and wow, I like this rubbery tar opening, but really addictive and intriguing. There's something about it, maybe from the gunpowder, that just like really just, yeah, intriguing. And the tobacco also has a cozy vibe to it on me. The rum is really well blended, so it just enhances the quality of the other notes. The leather's super smooth here. And I will say the fragrance overall is very intense. This is gonna smell pretty pungent to a lot of people. So this is not something I would recommend, like throw this on and then go to a club, or like, you know, expect to get tons of compliments or something. But if you like intense, rubbery, smoky scents with some booze, yes, you cannot go wrong with that. Next up was d'Assace by Naomi Goodsir. This has tobacco, whiskey, cinnamon, amber, cistus labdanum, oak moss, smoked cadewood, and Somalian incense. This is like suave and badass at the same time. It smells like several fragrances I've smelled before. Kind of hints of the opening of Zoologic's Hyrax versus more light version of TSVGA Vicky Lynn, among some other things, but it doesn't smell like any designer or popular ones. Those are very, very not common ones. And if you've smelled those, you might be thinking like, holy shit, Zoologist Hyrax, but that is just the opening of this. If you don't like intense smoky scents though, you very well might be disgusted by this, but I like this type of notes, so I really enjoy it. And although it's intense, the tobacco and whiskey are really well blended, so it does not go over the top boozy or earthy. It's really just intensely smoky with those elements in it. So another one for intense fans. Next up, we've got one that's a bit more on the gourmand, chocolatey side. This is Atelier Materi, Cacao Porcelana. This has white chocolate, rum, everlasting Indian jasmine, light tobacco, Tavana, patchouli, sandalwood, and tonka bean. And the cacao in the opening is so intriguing, and to me, so much better than the way cacao is normally used in fragrance. I love chocolate, but most times I see cacao as a note. It just sends it smelling so bitter, like super fancy dark chocolate with barely a touch of sweetness or brightness. Not a fan of that type of vibe. But here it smells like quality chocolate in like a Ghirardelli type of way, like so good. The rum does not overpower the fragrance. It smells like a dessert with like a really well incorporated touch of booze. And the tobacco is just also really well blended. It does not turn earthy, it doesn't turn pungent, and instead that just adds like another smooth, refined touch. Just really impressed with this scent for using so many notes that are kind of my least favorites, and yet somehow creating a mix that I find enjoyable. This isn't one that I would wear. It's just not, I'm not really into the gourmand type of side of it. It's a bit too heavy for my taste, but really well blended, really high quality. It would smell fantastic on the right person. So if you like the idea of like chocolate, boozy type of scent, that is for sure one you should check out. Next, we've got one of the most unique ones on this list besides Akro Malt, and this is called Fumidus by Profumum Roma. This has distilled scotch, vetiver root, and birch bark. So this brings a really random evocative image to my mind of being in the parking lot at a baseball game. There's burnt smoke wafting through the tailgate grills, roasted peanut shells, car fumes, rubber tires, sports equipment, a red plastic cup of scotch, and not that scotch is necessarily the baseball beverage of choice, but just alcohol, and a sense of excitement palpable in the air. And despite how not necessarily appealing that might sound as a wearable fragrance, I really like this, actually. There's just something so captivating about it, and it's pretty unique. And the boozy vibe is totally present, but it's not the central note, which I appreciate in this kind of thing where they manage to do it. It's like, okay, I can get the booze there, it's unique, but it doesn't just feel like I sprayed myself with scotch or whatever the boozy note is used. And the booze, yeah, it feels a little bit more background here, like more supporting role. This leans a bit mature, but in kind of like a daring and badass way, not like fuddy-duddy or old school or anything. And it's more just like you can't picture this going with someone who was like a teenager. But again, if you love intense, smoky, rubbery scents, another one on this list that's a must try. Next, more back in the classy and sort of fresh and almost coffee-ish direction, Uden by Xerjoff. Really interesting combination. I like it a lot more than I thought I would. This has notes of grapefruit, lemon, rum, rose, sandalwood, guaiac wood, vanilla, coffee, and musk. And I don't even usually enjoy coffee as a note either, but the mix here is just so well blended in a way where no one note takes over. It smells like familiar yet unique at the same time. To me, it leans masculine in kind of a suave way, almost like a barbershop scent without the spice, but with that kind of smoky aftershave type of feel. Ended up being one of my favorite Xerjoffs. It does smell a bit more designer than niche to me, but I don't mean that as an insult because I just feel like it's a very massive healing compared to a lot of niche that would be at that price. It is $275 for a 50 ml though, so you're not getting designer prices with that, but it's definitely a good one if you want like fresh kind of coffee and just all the stuff that's going on in the notes there that just comes together into something really nice. Next up, number 8. Getting closer to number 1, Angel's Share by Kilian. This has cognac, tonka bean, oak wood, vanilla, and cinnamon. Really well blended mix with the sweetness and warm spices accompanying it. Great for winter or fall, particularly in colder areas. It's strong, so do not need to overspray this or it could really overwhelm people. But if you like, as I've seen so many describe this smelling like a boozy cinnamon roll, yes. Perfect to smell like a boozy cinnamon roll during fall or winter, but it's not overly feminine if that sounds like that. I think that one's very, very unisex. And again, so strong that you're really getting bang for your buck there, and that's about $210 for a 50 ml. Next up, Plum in Cognac by Scents of Wood. This has plum, cinnamon, vanilla, rum, and vetiver. This to me smells like being on vacation, reading a newspaper, and drinking by an outdoor fireplace during fall. Really well blended and elegant. I just can't not respect the quality of this one. I think this was the first Scents of Wood one I tried where I was like, okay, this isn't something I would wear, because again, I'm just not a big boozy notes kind of guy, but like, yes, this is so high quality, so nice. And when I first looked at the notes, I pictured it being the type of kind of challenging niche fragrance that I don't like, the kind that smells like dried fruit, potpourri, and an overdose of like old school spice, but it's not like that at all. Much smoother, draws attention naturally without having to shout. It almost smells like a lightly candied guaiac wood on me in a good way. To me, it leans masculine and mature, more like probably 30 plus, but again, not in a stuffy way at all, just very pleasantly surprised by that. So nice. Number 6, another designer, more on the affordable side. Armani, Stronger With You, absolutely. Was really pleasantly surprised by how good this smells to me. It's not one of those boozy fragrances that makes you smell like I always say, like someone spilled a glass of whiskey on you or something like that. Not that any of these are, but this is definitely one of the kind of smoother, easiest to wear ones on this list. The rum really blends in with the other notes and just gives it some depth without screaming alcohol. And I actually thought this would be my least favorite in the Stronger With You series, but it ended up being my favorite. It keeps the good parts of the Stronger With You DNA, but it tones down those kind of sometimes cloying toffee-like vibes and adds a little smokiness. And I don't want this to sound like I'm saying it's a dupe by this comparison, but I can see some comparison to like Margiela by the Fireplace as well. There's a little bit of an almost like burnt smoky marshmallow type of vibe here in a good way with the chestnut, vanilla, etc. And again, I'm not even a fan of the original Stronger With You too much. I think it smells perfectly good, but it's just too cloying to me with the toffee. But this takes everything that was good about that and kind of makes it into a nice boozy smoky version. That's you can get for 100 ml for 110, but the price should be going down more too, like once, the longer it's been out and stuff like that. It's relatively recent. Now we're in the top 5. 5 is White Hinoki by Amoroud. This has ginger, blood orange, white pepper, labdanum, heliotrope, cinnamon, hinoki wood, tobacco, and whiskey. To me, this smells like a fancy hotel between the lobby, spa, and bar. Elements of all of those. The upscale lobby mixed with like a calming boutique spa. I can practically hear like that spa relaxing music playing. And cigar and whiskey with an almost like tangible, tropical, humid, woodsy earthiness outside. And this isn't something that I would wear, but it's something that I'm so glad I tried because it's just one of those that's so interesting and vividly evocative that, as I saw other reviewers say, it just really transports you to another place. And very unisex, almost masculine leaning, but I think overall that could easily be unisex in general. Number 4, Initio Side Effect. I'm sure probably most people have heard of it who are watching this and have tried my niche stuff. This has tobacco, vanilla, rum, and cinnamon. To me, the opening feels like a combination of Jazz Club and By the Fireplace by Margiela. Not that it's in any way identical to either, but just those type of vibes from both of those. And this is sort of what I was hoping Tobacco Vanille would be like by Tom Ford, but this really ended up delivering. And vanilla is really the only note in here that I normally like, but here just the whole combination works. It does not smell grossly boozy, it doesn't smell too intensely cinnamon, it also doesn't smell too candy-ish cinnamon like Big Red Gum or something. And often when people rave about how sexy a tobacco-based fragrance is, sometimes I try it and to me it just smells earthy or gross, but with Side Effect, I totally get it. It's so smooth. When the weather is cold enough to be a good fit for this, I would personally rather wear By the Fireplace, but honestly, if it wasn't for that, I really would maybe consider this full bottle, and it's just so good, such a great scent, and I'm glad it's not one of those niche ones that's overhyped and smells challenging. Instead, it's just like still really welcoming, but still unique, so just, yeah, I think you're getting everything that you could want out of sort of a like, yeah, tobacco-y, sweet rum type of scent with this, and some cinnamon too, just very, very nice. Probably my favorite fragrance of that specific type of boozy vibe. Number 3, Kilian Apple Brandy on the Rocks, and the original Apple Brandy as it was called. The newer one on the rocks has bergamot, pineapple, cardamom, oak, cognac, apple liquor, labdanum, cedar, vanilla, and ambroxan. This is like warm, spiked apple cider, and the newer one is like more smooth and caramely, with pineapple that's done really well here. Pineapple is another thing where I love it in real life, but often in wearable fragrance, it has this like sticky, syrupy, cloying aspect to it that just really doesn't do it for me. Obviously, I'm not talking about stuff like Aventus, but just the way that pineapple is used a lot of the time. But this is like a nice, warm, sweet, and deep scent that's mature enough to be worn by anyone of any age without smelling dated at all. So that's always a really nice combination when you can get something so classy like that, and it still doesn't smell like, oh, well, that's too old school or this or that. That feels very timeless to me. If you can get your hands on the original Apple Brandy, I like that one even better, but I'd never ever suggest blind buys. There are some places where you can still find a sample of that, but in general, yeah, the new one's still really good, Apple Brandy on the Rocks. Number 2, I've reviewed this on here before, Don by Xerjoff. This is supposed to smell like a Mafia Don. The notes in it are tobacco, whiskey, gunpowder, and a sugar or molasses type of accord. And I like that they let the gunpowder shine here. Such a smoky, nice, metallic, interesting scent to it. Really well blended and cohesive overall, with the tobacco and whiskey being very present, but without stealing the spotlight from the gunpowder until later in the dry down. Very masculine, a good option for people who want a dark, rich, masculine scent. Somewhat mature leaning, but not in any way like dated or anything like that. Just kind of like not really a super casual type of scent. Just very, very well done, and I think one of the best recent Xerjoff releases. Now we've come to number 1. This, I guarantee almost everyone has heard of, Margiela Jazz Club. So when I first tried this, I thought it was disgusting. It was very early on when I started trying more fragrances. Probably had not tried more than, I don't know, definitely under 50, I think, at that point. I was just starting to kind of get more into trying different stuff, and I just couldn't believe anyone would want to wear it. It just smelled so like, yeah, like maybe I'd also, because I wasn't used to boozy notes, just like too much like a real jazz club or something. But after I sampled maybe around 500 to 600, I went back and tried it, and I love it now. And so many more fragrances into it, I still really like it. And it just manages to smooth out the rough edges to me of the tobacco and the booze, and with a really nice bright balance with the pink pepper, lemon, and vanilla. There's some people who say, oh, it smells like cigarettes and sunscreen, and I could almost see that, but I think a lot of that comes down to skin chemistry, and of course that's always true with any fragrance, but this one I've seen, it really seems to be extra dependent on that, even more than most. And to be clear, again, the exact notes in this are pink pepper, neroli, lemon, rum, Java vetiver oil, clary sage, tobacco leaf, vanilla bean, and styrax. And I want to throw in a bonus cheapie here that's on the much more affordable side than even the designer ones on here. Calvin Klein Reveal for Men. This has crystallized ginger, mastic, pear, brandy, melon, suede, clary sage salt, agave nectar, tonka bean, vetiver, golden amber, and Haitian vetiver oil. So the opening smells really really classic Calvin Klein to me, like very 90s fresh, even though this wasn't released until 2015. The combination of the brandy, melon, ginger, and pear just really works in balancing some kind of spice and sweetness and still having depth. And I think the brandy just really works here. I wouldn't have expected it with some of those fresher notes and stuff, but it totally does. As this continues, it almost has kind of a stronger with you vibe to it to me, with that kind of tangy sweetness, or like Uomo Born in Roma Yellow Dream by Valentino. It gets a little creamier and more powdery in the base with the tonka, amber, and vetiver. But overall, I feel like it's very high quality smelling for the price, and it does the kind of like fresh aquatic side with the boozy side really well, and it never gets into like a shower gel scent or anything that cheap freshies sometimes can, go into. And you can Google that to find a bottle for around $40. I think it might be discontinued. The bottles are on different kinds of places now, so I'm not going to link that one in the description, but I will link a sample for that. And I will link where you can get samples to all of these, and for most of them, full bottles as well. If you have favorite boozy fragrances that I did not feature, let me know, or thoughts on any of the other ones in here, and thanks for watching.